We have accomplished a lot, and with the hope that they can follow through on that plan, what we're seeing is so much more than a simple landing of people on the moon. Landing isn't easy, but it's not even the most difficult part. We have done that before. But what follows is something radically new. We need to build on the moon. We need to construct a permanent base. Basically, a small city on an alien planet. And no one knows exactly how that's going to work, but we do have some very practical and innovative new solutions for life off the Earth. First, we have to discuss where this moon base is going to exist. The moon is a large place, and every past human landing has occurred roughly around the middle in a nice flat, safe area that was very convenient for direct radio communication with the Earth. But that was the 1960s. This time, when we come back to the moon, we are targeting a much more exciting place, the lunar South Pole. The area is covered with impact craters, mountain ranges, and ancient volcanoes. Some of the low valleys and crater beds are in permanent shadow. The ground has never seen sunlight in millions or billions of years and probably is full of water, ice that was delivered to the inner solar system on asteroids and comets. NASA has selected 13 possible landing sites for the Artemis program. They are chiefly on small patches of sunlight near crater rims or the summits of low mountains with deep shadows and tough terrain. This will be a profoundly intriguing area for scientific discovery, but it will be just as perilous for the individuals who must live and work on the moon for weeks and months at a time. So, this is going to need infrastructure like we've never seen before. All of the basics for a city on Earth must be replicated in the most extreme environment with the most constricted resources. So where do we start? With roads. Yes, where we're going, we do need roads and landing pads and other hard surfaces to work and construct on. The challenge that has to be overcome is dust. The lunar surface is covered with a relatively thin, but incredibly light and fluffy coat of ultrafine dust. Every grain of this moon sand is abrasive and sharp like broken glass. During the Apollo missions, it was used to cut through the outer layers of spacesuits and scratch the glass on the astronauts' helmets. To worsen matters, the dust is also sticky. Dust settling on the lunar roving vehicle made it overheat by clogging the radiator. The catch is that without atmosphere and with hardly any gravity, once you kick up dust, it really can travel. When Apollo 12 touched down on the moon, they attempted to come as close as they could to a probe called Surveyor 3 that had already landed on the moon several years previously. NASA wanted astronauts to check in on it. What they discovered was that despite the Apollo spacecraft landing only 180 meters away, Surveyor had been sandblasted by dust that rocket engines had thrown up. So, if we are going to have a moon base where people are continually landing, taking off, driving cars, and walking about, we should do as much as possible to rid ourselves of dust from our lives. That means roads, landing pads, and hard surface areas around our base camp. The quick and dirty solution in the short term would be rhino snot. That's a nickname that the U.S. military gives to a spray-on product used to stabilize dirt roads and helicopter landing pads out in the field. It was popular in Afghanistan for turning desert sand into solid material. They found it particularly useful for eliminating dust clouds created by helicopter takeoff and landing. So, that's a potential solution for the short term. It's not ideal because we have to transport all of this rhino snot from Earth, essentially contaminating the moon and filling it with microplastics. A more sustainable solution that can actually be scaled up to create a small city on the moon would be to simply melt the surface into solid glass. This is something that the European Space Agency is currently developing with an experiment called PA. Scientists have been working with simulated moon dust and a high-powered laser to try melting the dust into a solid glass-like finish. It's an idea that goes back to 1933, when people believed that you could pave roads across Earth's deserts just by melting the sand. Makes sense, right? Glass is melted sand. The idea was impractical back then, but for a moon base in the future, It may be the best thing we've got. We don't necessarily need to take a huge laser to the moon. Instead, we could place a large, magnifying glass to focus sunlight. Actually, they would use something called a Fresnel lens, which focuses light through grooves cut into a flat piece of clear plastic. This avoids needing a huge curved piece of glass. The Fresnel lens would only have to be just under 2.5 meters wide. But with the geography at the lunar South Pole, where the sun is low on the horizon and shadows are long, we may well require lasers as well. Either way, it would be a slow process. The Europeans developing the PA experiment expect that we would be able to form a 100 square meter landing pad with a 2 centimeters thickness in 115 days. That is roughly 100 times slower than paving roads with conventional asphalt. It's a large task, but we will be spending a great deal of time driving on the moon. Our main mode of transportation is going to be pressurized rover vehicles, such as this one under construction by the Japanese space program in collaboration with Toyota, also referred to as the Lunar Cruiser. This type of rover is how we are going to move around the moon base without having to keep getting in and out of space suits all day. You move directly from your pressurized habitat to your pressurized rover and then onto the next building. This is also how we explore deep into the wild. The Lunar Cruiser is essentially an RV for the moon. It can support the astronauts on a road trip that can last for 30 days or more and would be powered by a hydrogen fuel cell. Now, having an RV is cool and all, but where do we live? Well, we need to break that down into short-term accommodation and long-term. Building a moon base is not going to happen overnight, and NASA has already designed our first lunar house. They call it the Foundation Surface Habitat. It's a 3-story structure that combines a metal frame with an inflatable module and will support up to 4 people for about 1 month. Although the foundation will mostly be occupied by 2 astronauts while the other 2 crew members venture out on the moon in their pressurized vehicle, it's still functional. The ground level of foundation is a metal structure for meters in diameter. It has the airlock and EVA suits, along with the science station for geological experiments with lunar samples. Astronauts climb a ladder to get to the second level in the inflatable module. This expands to 6.5 meters in diameter. This is where we'll have exercise equipment and a biology lab, where astronauts will examine the effects of the lunar environment on plants and animals. The third level is the main living area for the crew. There are beds, a medical station, kitchen, and computer workstation. There is also a human research lab, where astronauts themselves are the guinea pigs in a study of how long-term habitation on the moon affects the human body. If we can overcome the foundation stage, we must begin constructing permanent lunar structures that give protection and security. We must shield ourselves from hazardous cosmic radiation, reduce the impact of extreme temperature fluctuations between lunar day and night, and protect against meteorite impacts. To achieve this, we turn back to the dawn of human architecture. We construct with bricks. Scientists believe we can melt moon dust to produce structural bricks. We could still utilize an inflatable or hard metal building, then surround it with a shell of brickwork. This would reduce most threats from radiation and micrometeorite impacts and also provide insulation for heating and cooling the habitat. China has already started testing their own moon bricks. Their vision is to construct an egg-shaped structure known as the Moonpot Vessel. Robots would construct it, combining traditional Chinese construction methods with lunar soil bricks and 3D printing. In 2024, China started an experiment to form bricks out of 5 simulated lunar soil combinations and tested 3 processes for heating the soil into solid rock. In November, they transported those bricks to the Tiangong space station, where they were placed on an external experiment rack. The bricks will spend the next 3 years exposed to the vacuum of space, cosmic rays, and large temperature changes to see how well they hold up. There's also a wild concept to combine glass melting and habitat construction into atmosphere structure on the moon. A U.S. company called Skyports has been funded by NASA's Institute for Advanced Concepts to develop this idea. They would heat the moon dust until molten, then blow it into a large sphere in compressed gas. Since there isn't much atmosphere and very little gravity, the structure could grow to huge sizes without collapsing. Multiple layers of glass, with air spaces between them, could provide additional protection and insulation. Not probably the most practical concept, but it's very cool. None of this will function without electricity. So where does that come from? The sun. Most lunar missions to date have been largely solar-powered, which has served us well enough. But there's a huge issue with solar power on the moon because the moon rotates much slower than Earth. It has an incredibly long day and night cycle, 2 weeks of sun and 2 weeks of dark. That never was an issue for human missions because those astronauts were only up there for 3 to 4 days at most. But when we send an autonomous lander or solar-powered rover, they only work for 14 days, then freeze solid for the next 14 days. Most never turn back on once sunlight returns. Even if they do, they don't work as they used to before the sun went down. Looking at our map of the 13 potential Artemis landing sites, most of those areas are in constant darkness. Sunlight never penetrates there. Those are the places where we are likely to find water ice, which we need to support our moon city. The solution is nuclear. Nuclear energy in space isn't new. China has been running a nuclear-powered rover on the far side of the moon for a few years. NASA has been employing nuclear rovers on Mars for over a decade. Voyager probes from the 1970s are also nuclear-powered, but these are all small-scale operations. They use heat from naturally decaying radioactive material to produce a few watts of electricity. Fine for a robot, but you cannot scale that to power an entire lunar base. We need a nuclear power plant on the moon. And that's exactly what NASA has been working on for several years, the Fission Surface Power Project. This uses the same fission reaction standard at all nuclear power plants on Earth. Uranium atoms are split, releasing tremendous energy as heat. In space, where there's no water to boil for turbines, we can use a Brayton converter to turn heat into electricity. One of the advantages of shadowy craters is that we can place the reactor there, and it will never overheat. The reactors have to be small. NASA specifies a weight under 6 metric tons, and no bigger than an average car, for a nuclear power plant. That's tiny, but for space systems, it's still large. Rolls-Royce is leading the way in space-based nuclear technology. Most think they make luxury cars, but they've manufactured nuclear reactors for the British Navy submarines for over 60 years. Their current micro-reactor design aims to produce 50 to 100 kilowatts of electricity, enough to power a small factory or several homes. One of these would be enough to get started on a small moon base, and adding a few more could power a moon city. There it is, our first outpost beyond Earth, a gateway to the solar system. If we can understand how to not only live on the moon, but thrive, build, and expand, we unlock new possibilities in space that would never be possible from Earth. This is how we boldly go where no one has gone before. Thanks for watching.